All right, class, we're going to move into essential question 8. Who am I? And it sounds like such a basic question, but if we can build on everything we have learned up until this date in this class, we have learned so much about God, about His Word, about salvation, about what it means to be saved. Question number 7. This question is very, very important. In a world that you live in a world that I live in, the question of identity constantly comes up. And there's a lot of confusion in our world about what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what it even means to be human. But what we believe about this question is crucial to our understanding of the gospel. It's crucial to how we live it out. So don't take this question, even though it's short, even though the whole unit or the chapter over this question is actually short. Do not take this for granted. Would you look at this quick definition here? There it is. Millard Erickson, theologian that I'm sure you've heard me quote before. He said it this way: our anthropology will determine how we understand ourselves and consequently how we do theology, or even what theology is. That is, to the degree that it is thought of as a human activity. Now, think about this quote above. Our anthropology, anthropos, Greek for man, you think apology is the study of man. Our study of man, our doctrine of humanity, it is so important that it's going to determine how we understand who we are. I agree with Erickson here. I think it cannot be overstated of just how important what we believe about who we are and really our origins. Origins imply a beginning, a purpose, not just a starting point, but it implies purpose. And so all of that, as we begin to understand who I am, who we are, it's going to impact how you do theology. Now, that might be an odd phrase to some, how we do theology, theos being the Greek word for God. So this is the theology is the study of God. But theology is not something that we just study in class. We've been doing that since August, and I know it may feel that way sometimes, but it's not. It's how we live life. It's how we see life. It's how we view this world. It's how we view ourselves when we look in the mirror. But this question, as Erickson hits, it even goes to the point of asking, what is theology? In some sense, to understand us, we have to understand God, but yet we're created in His image. So if we can begin to understand both, we're going to better understand how to do theology and what it actually is. All right, so I want to give you just briefly 5 reasons why this matters. 5 reasons why this matters, why it matters what I believe about who I am. And here's the thing, you're juniors in high school. In a little over a year, you're going to be hitting the college campus. I want you to be thinking about these issues now. You're already facing them in the shows you watch and the music you listen to, interacting at Starbucks. It doesn't matter where you're at. You're going to run into essential questions of who I am. First, we are the pinnacle of God's creation. And that's what I want us to, we're actually going to look at a couple things, the Imago Dei. I hope you've heard this phrase before. It literally means the image of God. And we're the pinnacle of that. And the pinnacle being the high point, the apex, if you will. I mean, there's God created man in His own image. And we're going to talk about what that actually means. Actually, you're going to do some research and help us all understand what that means. But there's nothing He created that is above us. There's no animal. I mean, we live in a world where we get more passionate about saving the dogs and the whales and whatnot than we do saving life. Honestly, you can get in more trouble by hurting a dog than hurting another person. And that's a place where our world is at. It's not right. It's not proper. Now, no, I'm not advocating to go out and kick your dog. But that's not the point, is it? The point is we put a greater emphasis on animal life, thinking dogs, cats, whales, bears, whatever, than we do God's own creation of man, the Imago Dei. And why do we do that? Because we fail to understand what it means to be created in the image of God. The second point, It helps us understand why God created. I mean, think about it. The further we can go into in the Imago Dei and begin to try to understand just what it means for us to be created in His image, I'm hopeful, and I hope you're hopeful, that we can get a little bit better understanding of why He created us in the first place. I mean, He didn't have to create. And apart from what some songs or books may teach us, God didn't create because He was bored or that He was lonely. And when we talked about the Trinity several weeks back, I hope we made that point then. God did not create because He was bored or lonely. He did so simply out of His own sovereign choice. That's why He did it. All right, what about a third point? I told you we'd go through these quickly. It helps the church connect with the unchurched. That sounds odd because this is such an issue in our world. People blasting the church, saying, our belief on man, life doesn't begin at conception, blah, 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 all of this kind of stuff. But think about it. Even someone who completely disagrees with me or you on this issue is alive. I mean, think about that for just a second. They still have to wrestle with the question, who am I? I actually exist. So there's different points that maybe the church, the unchurched, really just can't even like come to the table over and talk about because they're just not relevant to both groups. Life is relevant to both groups. And so in some ways, this helps us connect with the unchurched because people, whether we realize it or not, are out there asking, they are seeking for answers to the question of who am I? Why am I here? What purpose do I have? Why do I have opposable thumbs? We read about that I think it was out of Tortured for Christ here just before we had to go on our quarantine. But such an important concept, right? And so this idea of life, where we came from, the Imago Dei, very, very important. It helps us to connect with the lost. Point number 4 helps us answer ethical questions. Think of ethics, morality. When you go out into our world, we can take the issue of abortion, for example, or transgenderism, or any other number of true, real socialism issues, racism. Uh, the list goes on and on. Cohabitation. Yeah, things keep popping in my head here. But understanding who we are in Christ and who we are as it relates to the actual image of God is going to help us understand and answer these questions of morals, ethics, what's right and what's wrong. Um, I realize that in some areas of our life, there's a little bit of a gray area here and there, but I think there's a lot less gray area than we realize. And by gray area, I mean those areas where it is very difficult to understand completely the difference between what would be right and what would be wrong. But most of our areas of life are not that way. It's that is right or it is wrong. I mentioned cohabitation. The Bible is very clear. That is wrong. And when you look at, we've talked about this in class, when you look at divorce statistics, when it's linked to cohabitation, the statistics don't lie. Look at your own family life, your neighbors, your friends, people you know of. Cohabitation, it often ends in divorce. All right, and that's been my experience, not personally, of course, but from people that I've seen in my own life. And so we have to answer these questions. And the Imago Dei, if we can better understand what it means to be created in the image of God, it's going to help us here. All right, last one helps us properly minister to people. Take all of those, combine them together, and when I look at my neighbor, when I look at that college professor, when I look at a brother or a sister or a friend or the barista at Starbucks, if I can better understand what it means for all humanity to be created in the image of God, it might just change the way I see that individual. Go back to racism, for example. Racism fundamentally is we see people as inferior to ourselves, and we judge them, we uh, push them aside, press them down, basically because we think we are better than them. But fundamentally what we're failing to see there is they're created in the image of God, whether they're black or white, whether they speak a different language or from a different country, they are created in the image of God. That is very important. Think about these 5 reasons as we move on. Listen at the text here. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creep on the earth." Look at this part right there. Let us make man in our image. All right, and part of the assignment, I'm going to ask you to explore this text and along with several other passages and to really just stop and think about what does it mean to be created in the image of God. I want to encourage you, think about the image of God. Start there. When you think about God, we go back to, was it question number 4? Question number 2. I think it was question number 2 and maybe number 4. We have learned a lot about who God is. Go back to his incommunicable and communicable attributes. Go back and link into your notes and think about hopefully what you've learned. What's the image of God? And we're not talking about whether I remember years ago seeing a talk show. I think it was on an Oprah show. This was a long time ago, and I heard people debating on what God looked like. And somebody was saying that there's a passage, and I think it's in Daniel, that talks of his hair. I think it might be in Revelation, more like wool. And they were debating on the texture of their own hair. And I shake my head at that. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, could you miss the point any greater? Or this isn't about white Jesus or black Jesus, right? If there's an old Good Times episode, I think I've mentioned that in class. There's a whole episode attributed to black Jesus, and that's not what we're talking about here. But who is he? What about his nature? What about his character can help us understand what it means to be created in his image? So look at a few pictures here. So I pulled these up off the internet. Imago Dei. Look at the images there. Right? You can clearly see different people, different walks of life, people who are likely going to have different religious views, different cultures represented here. This is a classic picture. We think of the Imago Dei where, kind of like God and man reaching, connecting to one another. There's this connecting point. You think of Jesus in Bethlehem, or even being carried in Mary's womb. There is God reaching out to man. There's just a connecting point here. And I love this little image that I found, who I am, the Imago Dei, this Venn diagram connecting who I am to who I am becoming. And there's a passage in Romans that's going to be in part of your homework that I really want you to think about when it comes to that Venn diagram, because all of this is describing the Imago Dei, us being in the image of God. Quick passage I want to leave you with. I will encourage you to spend some time with this. I actually learned this from Ravi Zacharias. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words, and they sent their disciples to him, along with the Herodians, saying, "Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" Listen to Jesus' reply. He was aware of their malice. He put them to the test. And look at that. He got the coin. And he said, whose inscription is on the coin? Look at this part right here. Therefore, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. Ravi Zacharias had this great point here. This, and to God the things that are God. The coin, this gold coin, had Caesar's inscription on it. It was his. The coin was his. I want you to think here, whose inscription do we bear? It's not the government, it's not Caesar's, it's not your mom and dad's. We bear the inscription of God upon our bodies, and more importantly, our souls. What does that mean for us? That is a beautiful picture of the Imago Dei. All right, here's a quick assignment. This will also be on the Facts portal. I'm down to about 15 seconds or so. And so I just want you to study the following passages, provide a 2-paragraph summary of what it means to be created in the image of God. And look, you know a 2-paragraph, that's 3 to 5 sentences each.